The Unified Species Council had kept peace across the galaxy for 3,000 years. 12 different species sat together in the great halls of Prime and made decisions that affected billions of lives. They had learned to talk instead of fight. They had learned to trade instead of conquer. And for 30 centuries, this system had worked perfectly. Then humanity arrived. Ambassador still remembered the day human ships first appeared at the edge of Council space. He was a tall and slender being with silver skin and 6 eyes that could see in complete darkness. He had spent his entire life studying other species, trying to understand how different minds worked. But humans were something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. They came from a world that should have killed them. Earth was a planet of extreme temperatures, violent weather, and predators that hunted in packs. The gravity was crushing compared to most inhabited worlds. The air carried diseases that could kill other species in hours. And yet humans had not just survived on this death world. They had conquered it. They had spread across its surface and bent it to their will. The Council called them, and the name carried both fear and respect. 40 years had passed since first contact. Human soldiers had earned a reputation that spread to every corner of known space. They could march for days without rest. They could survive wounds that would kill any other species. They felt pain but kept fighting through it. They never surrendered, never stopped, never gave up. Regular human soldiers were already the stuff of legend. Had studied them carefully. He had read every report, watched every recording, and interviewed dozens of humans over the years. He thought he understood them. He thought he knew what they were capable of. He was wrong. The message arrived on his personal terminal 3 days before the annual Council summit. His source was a merchant who traded information for profit. There were reptilian beings with cold blood and even colder hearts, but this particular merchant had never lied to before. A group called the Purifiers was planning to attack the summit. They wanted to kill the leaders of all 12 Council species in a single strike. They believed the galaxy had grown weak under Council rule. They wanted to return to the old ways of conquest and domination. Took this information to the High Counselor immediately. Was a being who stood 3 meters tall and had ruled the Council for 60 years. She listened to his warning with her compound eyes showing no emotion. The Council security forces could not handle a real attack. They were ceremonial guards, trained for parades and formal events. They had never faced actual combat. If the Purifiers came in force, the Council would fall. Made a suggestion that shocked everyone in the room. He asked to contact Earth and request military assistance. The other Council members argued against this idea. Bringing human soldiers to their capital world was dangerous. Humans were unpredictable. Humans were violent. Humans could not be controlled. But had no other options. The Purifiers were coming, and the Council had nothing to stop them. Earth responded to the request within hours. They were sending help, but when learned the details, his heart sank. Earth was sending only 4 soldiers, 4 humans to protect the entire Council against an army of Purifiers. He thought it was an insult. He thought Earth did not take the threat seriously. He prepared to send an angry response demanding more support. Then the 4 humans arrived, and understood that he had made a terrible mistake in his assumptions. These were not regular soldiers. Commander Nate Bishop stepped off the transport first. He was average height for a human, with short brown hair and pale eyes that seemed to look through everything they saw. He moved differently than other humans had met. There was no wasted motion, no casual gestures. Every step was deliberate. Every glance was calculating. Behind him came 3 others. Lieutenant was a woman with red hair pulled back tight against her skull. She carried enough explosives on her body to destroy a small building. Sergeant Danny Vega was thin and quiet, with dark eyes that never stopped moving. He held a rifle that looked simple but was clearly modified in ways could not understand. Corporal Santos was the smallest of the group, with brown skin and a medical kit strapped to her back alongside weapons that gleamed with deadly purpose. None of them smiled. None of them spoke unnecessary words. They communicated in hand signals and glances that carried entire conversations. Approached Commander Bishop and introduced himself. He explained the situation, the threat, and his concerns about their small numbers. Bishop listened without expression. When finished, the human spoke in a voice that was calm and flat and utterly confident. "Regular humans survive," Bishop said. "We're trained to make sure others don't." Felt something cold run through his body. He had spent 40 years studying humans. He had thought he understood what made them dangerous, but looking into Bishop's eyes, he realized he had only seen the surface. He had studied human soldiers who fought to stay alive. These four fought to make their enemies die. The team spent 2 days preparing. They studied the assembly complex, mapped every corridor, identified every weakness. They placed equipment in locations they did not explain. They spoke to Council security forces and dismissed most of them to positions far from the summit chambers. Was not pleased with this. She demanded to know why 4 humans thought they could protect the Council better than hundreds of trained guards. Bishop's answer was simple. Your guards will panic. Panic causes mistakes. Mistakes get people killed. We don't panic. On the morning of the summit, the Council delegates gathered in the Great Hall. 12 species sat together, unaware of the danger approaching. Watched the 4 humans position themselves around the room. They were nearly invisible, blending into shadows that should not have been deep enough to hide them. Then the alarms began to sound. The Purifier fleet dropped out of hyperspace above Prime. Dozens of ships, carrying thousands of soldiers, all coming for the Council. They were 3 days early. Someone had leaked information. Someone had betrayed them. Felt despair wash over him. The attack was happening too soon. They were not ready. The Council would fall. He looked at Commander Bishop, expecting to see concern or fear. Bishop was smiling. Right on time, the human said quietly. Then he raised his hand and made a signal to his team. The 4 humans moved as one, flowing through the crowd like water through cracks in stone. The battle for Prime had begun. The Purifier fell from the sky like metal rain. They landed in rings around the assembly complex, each one carrying 50 soldiers hungry for blood. Within minutes, over 2,000 warriors stood ready to storm the building that held the Council. Their commander was unnamed. He had fought in dozens of campaigns across the outer systems. He had never lost a battle. His scales were marked with scars from enemies who had tried and failed to kill him. He looked at the beautiful crystal towers of the assembly complex and smiled with rows of sharp teeth. This would be easy. The Council had no real military. Their security forces were decorations, not soldiers, expected to be standing over the bodies of 12 species leaders within the hour. He gave the order to attack. The first wave of purifiers entered the complex through every door and window they could find. They moved fast and loud, weapons ready, voices shouting battle cries that echoed through the marble halls. The Council security forces tried to stop them. These guards had trained for years, practiced formations, studied tactics from books, but they had never seen real combat. They had never watched friends die beside them. They had never felt the terror of facing enemies who truly wanted to kill them. They broke within minutes. Some ran, some froze, some tried to fight and died quickly. The purifiers pushed through them like a wave crashing through sand castles, received reports of easy progress from every direction. His forces were converging on the central chamber where the Council members hid. Then the reports stopped. Waited for updates that did not come. He tried to contact his forward units. Silence. He tried to reach his officers. Nothing. The communication channels were filled with static and screams that cut off suddenly. Something was wrong. Deep inside the complex, Commander Nate Bishop moved through corridors that should have been impossible to navigate. He had memorized every turn, every door, every shadow during his 2 days of preparation. He knew this building better than the beings who had built it. His team had split up the moment the attack began. They had one job: get the Council members to safety. But Bishop knew that defense alone would not save anyone. The best way to protect something was to make the enemy too scared to attack it. He found a group of 8 purifiers moving through a hallway. They were checking rooms, searching for Council delegates to capture or kill. They never saw him. Bishop killed 3 of them before the others knew he was there. He used no gun, no explosive, nothing loud. Just a blade and hands that had been trained to end lives quickly and quietly. The remaining 5 turned to face him, weapons raised. They died looking into pale eyes that showed no anger, no hatred, no emotion at all. Just calm efficiency. 3 floors above, Danny Vega lay flat on a beam that crossed the great atrium. His rifle was custom-built, designed for accuracy at ranges that most species considered impossible. He watched the purifier forces through his scope and chose his targets carefully. Officers first, the ones giving orders, directing troops, maintaining organization. One by one, they fell. clean shots through skulls and hearts. The soldiers around them never saw where the death came from. They only knew that their leaders were dying and there was nothing they could do about it. Panic began to spread through the purifier ranks. They had expected helpless victims. They had found something else entirely. On the building's east side, finished placing her last explosive charge. She had turned an entire section of corridors into a trap. The purifiers would enter, thinking they had found a clear path to the council chambers. Then the walls would come down around them. She waited in shadow, watching through a small camera she had hidden near the entrance. A group of 30 soldiers approached, moving in formation. They were confident. They were well trained. They walked straight into her kill zone. Press the trigger. The explosion was precise, calculated to collapse the ceiling without bringing down the entire building. Stone and crystal fell on the purifiers, crushing them beneath tons of debris. The survivors stumbled out of the dust cloud, wounded and confused. Was waiting for them. In the medical wing, Santos had gathered the council delegates into a defensible position. She had moved them through ventilation shafts and service tunnels, paths that the purifiers did not know existed. Now she stood at the only entrance to their hiding place, weapons ready. A squad of purifiers found them anyway. Someone had talked. Someone had revealed their location. 10 soldiers came through the door, weapons raised, ready to capture the most important beings in the galaxy. Killed them all in 11 seconds. She moved like water, flowing between enemies, striking at weak points that most species did not even know they had. She was trained as a medic, taught to understand how bodies worked. She used that knowledge in reverse, finding the fastest ways to make bodies stop working. When the last purifier fell, she turned to check on the delegates. Her face was calm, her breathing steady. A young delegate named stared at her with wide eyes filled with terror. Noticed the fear and her expression softened. "You're safe," she said gently. "I won't let anyone hurt you." Could not understand how the same hand that had just killed 10 soldiers could now touch her shoulder with such kindness. Back at the purifier landing zone, received a report that made his blood run cold. He had lost 200 soldiers in the first hour, 200 warriors killed by an enemy they could barely see. His forces still outnumbered the defenders by enormous margins, but numbers meant nothing against ghosts. He ordered a communication blackout. No signals in or out of the system. He could not let word of this disaster spread to the rest of the galaxy. The purifiers were supposed to be unstoppable. They were supposed to bring fear, not feel it. High Counselor watched the battle through security cameras that still functioned. She saw the 4 humans moving through her complex like shadows with teeth. She saw hundreds of purifiers die without ever seeing their killers. She turned too, her compound eyes showing something she had never felt before, fear mixed with wonder. "What kind of humans are these?" she asked. Watched a screen showing Bishop eliminating an entire squad single-handedly. His voice was quiet when he answered. "The kind their own species creates when survival is not enough, when they need to become fear itself." Made his decision. Regular soldiers could not handle this enemy. He would send his elite guard, the best warriors the purifiers had ever produced. They had never failed him before. They would hunt these humans and end this nightmare. His elite guard entered the assembly complex through the main entrance. They did not sneak. They did not hide. They walked in formation, 40 of the deadliest warriors the purifier movement had ever produced, and they dared the humans to face them. These were not ordinary soldiers. Each one had survived campaigns that killed thousands. Each one had trained since childhood in the arts of combat. They carried weapons designed for war and armor that could stop most projectiles. They had fought against every species in the galaxy and won every time. They expected a difficult battle. They were confident they would win. The corridors of the assembly complex were wide and tall, built to accommodate species of all sizes. Crystal pillars held up ceilings painted with images of galactic peace. Marble floors reflected the soft light from panels that lined the walls. It was a beautiful place, designed for diplomacy and cooperation. It was about to become a killing ground. Found them first. She had been moving through a parallel corridor, checking on the explosive traps she had placed earlier. When she heard the elite guard approaching, she changed direction and positioned herself at a junction where 3 hallways met. 40 against 1, any reasonable person would have retreated. Was not reasonable, she was special forces. The first guard to reach the junction was a massive and warrior who stood nearly 3 meters tall. His armor was from 100 battles. He saw standing alone in the hallway and charged, confident that his size would overwhelm her. Waited until he was close, then she moved. She dropped low, sliding under his reaching claws. Her blade found the gap between his chest plates, the tiny weakness in his armor that only someone who had studied anatomy would know existed. The giant fell and was already moving to the next enemy. The corridor became chaos. The elite guards were trained to fight in open spaces, to use their numbers and strength. Force them into tight quarters where size became a disadvantage. She used the walls, the ceiling, the pillars. She bounced between surfaces like a living weapon, striking and vanishing before they could respond. 3 guards fell in the first 10 seconds, then 5 more. The others tried to regroup to form a defensive line, did not let them. She fought 3 at once, using one enemy's body as a shield against another's weapon. She turned their attacks against each other, making them wound their own allies in confusion. She was faster than them, smarter than them, and utterly without fear. When Danny Vega arrived, half the elite guard was already dead. He had been forced to abandon his sniper position when Purifier soldiers discovered his hiding place. They had expected to find him helpless at close range. They had learned quickly that a human Special Forces sniper was just as lethal with a knife as with a rifle. Danny joins battle without a word. They moved together as if they had rehearsed this dance 1,000 times. Where she went high, he went low. Where she attacked, he defended. They covered each other's weaknesses and each other's strengths. The remaining elite guards faced 2 humans and could not land a single blow. Elsewhere in the complex, Santos had left the council delegates in a secure room to respond to a distress signal. A group of purifiers had found a maintenance worker hiding in a storage closet. They were going to kill him for sport. Arrived as they raised their weapons. 4 soldiers died before they knew she was there. The 5th managed to turn and face her. He was large and powerful, with scales that could turn aside most blades. He looked at the small human woman and laughed. "1 little against me," he said. "This will be quick." He was right, it was very quick. Knew exactly where scales were weakest. She knew the location of every major blood vessel, every nerve cluster, every vulnerable point on a reptilian body. She was a medic. She understood how bodies worked better than anyone. The fell and knelt beside the terrified maintenance worker. Her hands, still wet with enemy blood, touched his face gently as she checked for injuries. "You're okay," she said softly. "Can you walk? I'll take you somewhere safe." Delegate had followed, unable to stay behind while others were in danger. She watched from the doorway as the human killed 4 soldiers in heartbeats, then immediately became tender and caring with the worker she had saved. "How do you do that?" asked. Her voice was shaking. "How do you switch between killing and kindness so easily?" Helped the worker to his feet before answering. Her eyes were calm, her voice steady. "We don't enjoy killing," she said. "We're just very good at it. That's what makes us useful." Commander Bishop found the last of the elite guard in the great atrium. They had regrouped there, 15 survivors out of 40, all of them wounded and exhausted. At their center stood a massive warrior wearing armor marked with golden symbols of rank. This was personal champion, a being who had killed more enemies than any other purifier alive. Bishop walked into the atrium alone. He carried no gun, just a blade that looked too small to threaten anything. The champion laughed and stepped forward. "I have killed 1,000 warriors," he announced. "You are just 1 more." Bishop said nothing, he simply waited. The champion attacked with speed that should have been impossible for his size. His blade was a blur, his movements practiced over decades of combat. He had killed and he had never lost a duel. Bishop ended the fight in 4 seconds. He did not match the champion's strength. He did not try to block the powerful blows. He simply stepped aside at the exact right moment and struck at the exact right spot. 1 cut to a tendon, 1 strike to a nerve cluster, 1 final thrust through the champion's throat. The remaining elite guards watched their greatest warrior fall. Then they looked at the human standing over his body, not even breathing hard, pale eyes showing nothing but cold calculation. They ran. Bishop let them go. Running enemies spread fear. Fear broke armies faster than bullets. Received the report from the survivors. His elite guard was destroyed. The 4 humans had killed his best warriors like they were training dummies. Nothing he sent against them made any difference. He had one option left. He contacted his fleet and ordered them to prepare for orbital bombardment. If he could not capture the Council, he would destroy them. He would turn the assembly complex into a crater and claim victory over the ashes. When Bishop heard this threat through an intercepted communication, he smiled. His team gathered around him, wounded but functional, ready for whatever came next. Approached them, his silver face showing despair. "They will bomb us from orbit," the ambassador said. "There is nothing you can do against starships." Bishop's smile widened. "We didn't come alone," he said. "We never do." High above Prime, hidden in the shadow of a moon, a ship began to power up its engines. The hunt was about to become very different. The Purifier fleet held position above Prime like a fist waiting to strike. 37 warships, each one carrying enough firepower to level a city, had given them their orders. Prepare to bombard the assembly complex. Prepare to turn crystal towers and marble halls into dust and memory. The fleet commander was a cautious officer named. She did not like this order. Destroying the Council by bombardment was not glorious. It was not the clean victory they had promised their followers. But she had seen the reports from the ground. She had watched recordings of 4 humans cutting through the elite guard like farmers cutting grain. Whatever was happening down there wanted no part of it. She would follow orders and rain fire from the safety of space. Her censor officer interrupted her thoughts with a confused report. Something was wrong with one of their escort ships. Its engines had gone dark. Its weapons were offline. Communications showed only static. Ordered a scan of the affected vessel. Before the results came back, another ship went silent, then another. "What is happening?" demanded. Nobody could answer her. Their ships were dying one by one, and they could not see what was killing them. The quiet step slid through the Purifier formation like a ghost through fog. Captain Ellen Shore stood at its helm, watching her crew work with the quiet efficiency that defined human special operations. Her ship was small compared to the Purifier warships. It carried no heavy weapons, no thick armor, nothing that would win a straight fight. But the quiet step was never designed for straight fights. Human engineers had built this vessel for one purpose: to be invisible. Its hull absorbed sensor signals instead of reflecting them. Its engines produced no heat signature. Its systems ran so quietly that it could pass within meters of an enemy ship without being detected. Shore had been hiding in this system since before Bishop's team landed. She had watched the Purifier fleet arrive. She had mapped their positions, studied their patrol patterns, identified their weaknesses. Now she was using that knowledge to take them apart piece by piece. Her boarding teams moved through the enemy ships like shadows. They disabled engines, destroyed weapons, cut communications. They did not kill unless necessary. Dead crews raised alarms. Disabled crews just drifted helplessly in space. By the time understood what was happening, she had lost half her fleet without firing a single shot. "Find that ship," she screamed at her officers. "They have to be somewhere." But human stealth technology was centuries ahead of anything the Purifiers had encountered. The quiet step drifted past their sensors again and again, invisible and deadly. Shore allowed herself a small smile as another enemy warship went dark. On the ground, Bishop received confirmation that the orbital threat was being neutralized. He gathered his team at the entrance to the communication center, deep in the heart of the assembly complex. Their mission had changed. Protecting the Council was no longer enough. The galaxy needed to see what had happened here. They needed to see the Purifier atrocities. They needed to see 4 humans standing against an army. They needed to understand what special forces truly meant. The communication center was defended by the last organized Purifier force on the planet. 200 soldiers held the building, determined to maintain the blackout that hid their failures from the universe. Bishop looked at his team, was wounded in 3 places but still steady. Danny had run out of rifle ammunition hours ago and carried only a pistol and blade, had exhausted most of her medical supplies keeping everyone functional. They were tired, hurt, and facing 50-to-1 odds. None of them hesitated. "You have the entrance," Bishop said. "Danny, find high ground. Stay mobile and keep us alive. I'll punch through to the broadcast equipment." They moved out without another word. 4 humans against 200 defenders. Any other species would have called it suicide. Hit the front entrance like a thunderstorm. She had saved her last explosives for this moment. The blast tore through the purifier defenses and sent bodies flying. Before the dust settled, she was through the gap and fighting. Danny found a maintenance shaft that led to the building's upper levels. He emerged on a balcony overlooking the main hall, perfect for his remaining pistol. Each shot counted. Each bullet found its target. Moved through the chaos, appearing wherever she was needed most. She patched wounds on the run, kept her teammates fighting, and killed any enemy who got too close. Her hands switched between healing and harming so smoothly that she seemed to be two different people occupying the same body. Bishop cut straight through the center. He did not hide. He did not sneak. He walked forward through enemy fire, trusting his armor and his training to keep him alive. Purifiers fell around him like leaves in autumn. Those who stood in his path died. Those who ran from his path lived a little longer. As he fought, Bishop thought about why he did this work. He had not been born violent. None of his team had. They were ordinary people once, with families and dreams and fears like anyone else. Then they had been selected, tested, trained until every trace of ordinary was burned away. Human special forces existed because humanity understood a terrible truth. Peace required violence. Safety required danger. The only way to protect the innocent was to create people capable of destroying the guilty. They had taken the most promising soldiers and made them into something more. Not monsters. Monsters killed without reason. Special forces killed so that others could live. The difference mattered. Was waiting in the broadcast room. The Purifier commander had left his landing zone when his fleet started dying. He had come to the communication center for a final stand, surrounded by his last loyal guards. When Bishop entered the room, stood before the broadcast equipment with a weapon aimed at the controls. "One more step and I destroy everything," said. His voice was steady but his hands trembled. "Your mission fails, the council dies, you accomplish nothing." Bishop stopped. Behind him, his team secured the room's other entrances. Purifier bodies littered the floor. The fighting was almost over. "Your monsters," continued. "You humans are the most dangerous things in this galaxy. You should be destroyed before you destroy everyone else." Bishop's pale eyes showed nothing but calm. "No," he said quietly. "Monsters kill without reason. We kill so others can live. There's a difference." "What difference? Dead is dead. You have murdered hundreds of my soldiers today. Your soldiers came here to slaughter innocent people. We came here to stop them. If that makes us monsters in your eyes, then I accept that judgment." His hands tightened on his weapon. He could still destroy the broadcast equipment. He could still deny the humans their victory. Then he heard his voice from the doorway behind him. "You might want to check your weapon. I disabled it 3 minutes ago." Pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. He stared at the useless weapon in his hands, unable to understand how she had gotten close enough without him knowing. Bishop crossed the distance between them in a heartbeat, fell, and the broadcast equipment remained intact. Moved to the controls and began the activation sequence. In moments, the communication blackout would end. The entire galaxy would see what had happened on Prime. "Sending now," said. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds were about to learn what humanity's special forces could do. The broadcast reached every corner of the galaxy within hours. Communication relays carried it from system to system, world to world, until billions of beings on thousands of planets watched the same images unfold before their eyes. They saw the Purifier fleet arriving above Prime. They saw thousands of soldiers landing around the assembly complex. They saw the Council security forces crumble and run. They saw everything that should have been the end of galactic civilization. Then they saw the humans. 4 figures moving through marble halls like shadows with purpose. They watched destroy an entire corridor of enemies with calculated explosives. They watched Danny eliminate officers from distances that seemed impossible. They watched save lives between the moments she ended them. They watched Bishop walk through enemy fire like it was rain, untouchable and unstoppable. The galaxy had known about human soldiers. They had heard the stories of who refused to die, who fought through wounds that would kill any other species. They had feared regular humans for their endurance and determination. This was different. These humans did not simply refuse to die. They made death into an art form. They moved with precision that seemed mechanical but carried an intelligence that machines could never match. They adapted to every situation, overcame every obstacle, and never stopped advancing. The council members were shown throughout the broadcast, huddled in safe rooms while chaos raged around them. Viewers watched Purifier soldiers get within meters of capturing galactic leaders. Then they watched those soldiers fall to enemies they never saw coming. By the time the broadcast ended, the Purifier fleet was drifting helplessly in space. Their ground forces were dead or surrendering. Their communication blackout had failed, and every species in the galaxy had witnessed their total defeat. 4 humans had stopped an army. The final battle in the communication center was broadcast live. Viewers watched Bishop confront, heard their exchange of words, saw the Purifier commander fall. They watched activate the broadcast equipment without celebration or pride. Just quiet efficiency, the same expression she had worn while killing hundreds of enemies. When the fighting ended, something strange happened. The humans did not celebrate. They did not pose for the cameras. They simply gathered together, checked each other's wounds, and waited for evacuation. Captain Ellen Shore landed the quiet step in the assembly complex courtyard as dawn broke over Prime. Her boarding teams had disabled the entire Purifier fleet without losing a single operative. 37 warships neutralized by one small vessel and its crew of shadows. High Counselor emerged from the safe room to meet them. The towering moved slowly, her compound eyes taking in the devastation around her. Crystal pillars had been shattered. Marble floors were stained with blood. Bodies lay in heaps throughout the corridors. Yet the council lived. Every single delegate had survived, not because of luck, not because of their own forces, because 4 humans had decided that they would not die today. Approach Bishop's team. They stood in a loose formation, weapons lowered but not holstered. Even now, even in the aftermath of victory, they remained alert, ready. "I owe you more than I can express," said. "You saved not just our lives, but the future of galactic cooperation." Bishop nodded. His face showed no pride, no satisfaction. "We did our job," he said simply. "Your job?" His voice carried disbelief. "You faced an army. You fought for hours against overwhelming odds. You could have retreated a dozen times and no one would have blamed you." "Retreat wasn't the mission," Danny said quietly. "Protection was." Turned to look at each human in turn, with her burns and blast wounds. Danny with dried blood on his hands, with empty medical pouches and exhausted eyes. Bishop with cuts and bruises that he seemed not to notice. "Why?" the High Counselor asked. "Why do this for species that are not your own? Why risk so much for beings you have never met?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Ambassador stepped forward, his silver face reflecting the morning light. "I have studied humans for 40 years, he said. "I thought I understood them. I thought their greatest strength was their ability to survive. I was wrong." He looked at the 4 Special Forces operators with 6 eyes that had seen many wonders, but nothing like this. Human Special Forces are selected not just for their combat skills. They must pass tests of character that would break most beings. They must prove that they can wield extreme violence and choose not to unless necessary. They must show that they can be the most dangerous things in any room and still remain human. Turned to address the council members who had gathered behind. "Other species create soldiers who follow orders. Humans create warriors who think, who adapt, who protect, not because they are commanded to, but because they believe it is right." A small voice interrupted the moment. A young child ran across the courtyard towards Santos. This was one of the children from the medical wing someone had saved during the early hours of the battle. The child threw her arms around his legs and held tight. "Thank you for keeping us safe," she said. Knelt down to the child's level. Her hands, the same hands that had killed dozens of enemies that night, touched the girl's face with impossible gentleness. Her voice was soft and warm. "You're welcome, little one. Everything is okay now." The council members watched this exchange in silence. They had seen fight. They had watched her move through enemies like death itself, ending lives with clinical precision. Now they saw her comfort a frightened child with the tenderness of a loving parent. Delegate spoke quietly too. "How can she be both things at once? How can anyone?" "That is what makes them special," replied. "They are not killing machines. They are protectors who have mastered violence as a tool. The violence serves the protection, not the other way around." Captain Shore approached to report that evacuation was ready. The council members would be transported to a secure location while the situation on Prime was stabilized. The surviving purifiers would be taken into custody. The disabled fleet would be towed to holding facilities. As the council began to board the transport ships, paused to address the gathered delegates one final time. "We have witnessed something today that will change our civilization," she announced. "For 3,000 years, we have maintained peace through diplomacy and mutual understanding. We believed that violence was primitive, something to be evolved beyond." She gestured toward Bishop's team. "These humans have shown us another truth. Sometimes peace requires guardians. Sometimes civilization needs protectors who stand ready to face the darkness so that others can live in light." The delegates murmured among themselves. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked troubled by the implications, but none could deny what they had seen. Bishop's team boarded the quiet step without ceremony. Their mission was complete. The council was safe. The purifiers were defeated. They had done what they came to do. As the ship lifted off, stood in the courtyard and watched it rise toward the stars. Around him, the cleanup had begun. Medical teams tended to the wounded. Security forces secured the remaining purifier prisoners. Engineers began assessing the damage to the beautiful complex. A younger aide approached him. "Ambassador, the council is requesting your presence for debriefing." Did not move. He continued watching the sky where the human ship had disappeared. "The galaxy feared humanity," he said softly. "We feared their survival instincts, their resistance to death, their savage home world. We thought that was the extent of what they were." He finally turned to face his aide. His silver features carried an expression of profound respect. "Now we have seen what humans create when they truly wish something protected. We have seen warriors who choose mercy over cruelty, who protect the helpless while destroying the guilty, who can switch between violence and kindness in a single breath." Began walking toward the council chamber. His voice carried clearly in the morning air. "The galaxy's fear of humanity has not decreased. It has transformed into something far more valuable. We do not just fear them anymore." He paused at the chamber entrance and looked back at the sky one final time. "We respect them. And for beings as powerful as these humans, that respect may be the greatest protection our civilization has ever known." Above Prime, the quiet step jumped to hyperspace, carrying its cargo of warriors home. Their mission was complete, but their legend was just beginning to spread across the stars. The galaxy had learned a new truth about humanity. It would never forget.